Good morning, all. It has been a very busy few weeks, but I hope you're all looking forward to what I think is today's final full day of events on Solutions Day. And I don't think it's going to be rest for everyone tomorrow, but I think a slightly different pace. My name's Mike Pearce. I'm the Executive Director of Systems Change at Climate Group. We're a global climate non-profit. I'm very happy to be your chair for this morning's discussion. It's a particular pleasure to be chairing this event, which follows on really from the headline event we held at COP26 last year. And it's particularly exciting to have the opportunity to learn about the progress that's been made over the past 12 months, to look for further areas of global cooperation, and indeed to look for innovative solutions for the key challenges that remain. At Climate Group, I'm pleased to say we've played our part in maintaining the momentum built at last year's COP. At Climate Week New York early this year, we launched EV100+, which is an initiative focused on transitioning the heaviest, most polluting vehicles on our roads today to zero emission by 2040. To begin today's discussions, we're joined by global representatives from the UK government, industry and the not-for-profit sector, as we know, all of whom play an active and critical role in the sphere of international road freight decarbonisation. So what I'm going to do is just introduce the panellists, and then we'll have a keynote speech and then move on to the panel. So, firstly, we have Andreas Voller, who is Head of Sustainability at Scania. Andreas is responsible for coordinating Scania's sustainability, circular economy and climate operations at a corporate level. Scania is a signatory to the Global Memorandum of Understanding, committing signatories to ensuring 100% sales of zero-emission medium and heavy-duty vehicles by 2040. And this year announced the introduction of a new range of battery-electric tractor-trailer trucks into its European fleet. Next, we have Angela Hultberg. Angela is Global Sustainability Director at the management consultancy Carney. She advises clients on sustainability strategy and adoption, including in the automotive and transportation sectors. Angela was previously Head of Sustainable Mobility for IKEA, Inca Group, for over 3 years. We're also joined by Baroness Veer. Baroness Veer is the Minister for Aviation, Maritime and Security at the UK's Department for Transport and has been a Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State there since 2019. She's previously covered a breadth of other policy areas, including roads and local transport. And her career also spans working in mental health, digital recruitment and investment banking. Finally, we have Christophe Wolff. Christophe is CEO of the Smart Freight Centre, an international NGO based in Amsterdam, focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions from freight transportation. Christophe previously worked with the World Economic Forum and was Managing Director of the European Climate Foundation. He also spent 16 years at McKinsey as a senior partner, leading on global travel, logistics and infrastructure. So, what a fabulous panel for this conversation today. And so without further ado then, let's get the proceedings underway, and I'd like to invite Baroness Veer to deliver some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. I hope you're well. It's a huge pleasure to be here today, and I know that everyone's probably flagging a bit because it's the end of a fortnight, but I know that some really good conversations are still taking place. I would encourage you to keep going just that last little bit, because we really do need to make some real change, and I think the topic today, road freight decarbonisation, is absolutely critical, because we do know that transport itself is very difficult to carbonise, and one of the most difficult to abate on the roads is indeed our heaviest trucks. And so it's really good to see Scania here today to find out what they're doing and in terms of how we're going to get to where we need to be. But we're also here to touch on diversity. Now, I was roads minister for 3 years. My goodness. I mean, transport itself is quite rubbish at being diverse, isn't it? But I'm afraid the whole logistics sector, oh my word, it's got so much catching up to do. And it's really got to be all the way through the organisation. It's got to get all the way down to the recruits, right on the first instance, from school, from college, from university. They've got to understand that this is a win-win for them. And actually, just employing old white guys isn't going to do it, because old white guys don't necessarily have all the best ideas, or indeed any of the best ideas, sorry, Mr. Scania. But we've got to get some other people, younger people, people from different ethnic backgrounds, women, for goodness sake, And so we actually in the government have been working very closely with the logistics sector, and we invested some money, £245,000 in their Generation Logistics campaign, which actually was it goes on for the whole year, but it was something that we recognised during the pandemic when we suddenly realised we had no more truck drivers anymore. So we thought we'd better do something about it. And so it's really good to be working alongside industry, because I do see this as an industry issue, but if the government can help to convene, provide a bit of funding, but also provide that impetus so that they focus on really sorting out their diversity problem. But on to the real topic as well of today's conversation about decarbonisation. The UK, as you will probably all know, published our transport decarbonisation plan, a huge amount of work, obviously the first sort of big plan from a leading developed economy, and we have continued to work on that and to bring forward further developments over the last year. So we've committed to a zero-emission vehicle mandate for cars and vans. That will be coming in fairly soon. We've announced new funding for sustainable aviation fuels, also very important. Been continued investing in public transport. So an awful lot still going on in the area. However, road freight, because we are going to need road freight. There is no world that we do not need road freight, although I do have a fund to encourage and support people to take their goods off-road and put them on rail and inland waterways. I mean, frankly, that's not going to really be that wide-reaching. So, we do need to say, OK, road freight's going to be around forever. It absolutely is at the heart of everybody's economy, not just the UK. It gets the stuff where it needs to be. But HGVs, as we know, massively difficult to decarbonise, but we are getting there. So we have said in the UK that we will do a phase out of the sale of new vehicles by weighing under 26 tonnes by 2035, and then all HGVs sold in 2040 will be zero emission at the tailpipe. So I think that very much links in to what Scania has decided to do, and therefore we warmly welcome it. So how are we actually going to get there? What's the government doing in terms of funding? Well, actually, we've committed £200 million to the Zero Emission Road Freight Demonstrator Programme. That, I think, is the biggest demonstrator programme in the world at the moment. I'm absolutely open for another country coming in to just top that. Don't mind, I'm golden. Because we need to get data. We need to understand which type of intervention works the best, whether that is battery, whether it is hydrogen fuel cell, potentially some people might say hydrogen combustion, and or catenary. My money's not on catenary, but someone will tell me I'm wrong. They're having more fun than us. This is no good. This is no good. But £200 million is not insignificant, so we need to get that data and obviously feed that back to the manufacturers, feed that back to the vehicle owners so that they make the right choices. Okay, I've now lost the room, it's too noisy out there, and I'm going to draw my opening remarks to an end, and then we can just have a noisy panel session with, I don't know, the Mexicans? What do we think? They're having tequila or something. Anyway, let's have the panel session, because I'm really looking forward to hearing what my colleagues have to say.
Thank you to Baroness Veer for those motivating words and for very pointedly handing me that poison chalice of beating the noise outside. I don't know whether this is Lula's second arrival we may have here. It was really helpful to hear about the progress that the UK has made as it continues to lead the way in decarbonising the road freight sector. And I think there's also a part to that which is how we inspire further action at the international level through the Global Memorandum of Understanding. So really critical part. Can I ask the panel to join us on stage now? You will note there are three microphones between four, and so there is some collaboration involved there between you as we get on to the questions. A couple of you might share. So for the panel discussion, we are going to be looking at three particular themes relating to the decarbonisation of the road freight sector. To first set the scene, we can see there's going to be a slide put up which is showing the figures for global and European zero-emission heavy-duty vehicle sales over the past decade up to 2020, including trucks, buses and coaches. While the global trajectory has declined somewhat, if you take a closer look, you can see a significant increase in zero-emission sales of HDVs across Europe, the Americas and the rest of the world. On the right-hand side, there's also a detailed breakdown of European sales, and you can note the leap in progress made from 2018 to 19 and 20, even despite the impacts of the COVID pandemic. And on this slide, you can see the sales growth in the zero-emission HDV market that's stabilised in the rest of the world in 2021. So, progress is being made, more is to be done. The first of those themes that we're going to look at is around government support for the zero-emission road freight transition. So, the question today then for the panellists is, over the past year, in your view, what progress has been made? And following on from that, where do gaps remain and how will they be addressed? And Christoph, you're next to me here. Would you like to kick off on that question? And it's gone quieter, so the timing is marginally better.
So I tried to fit my 2 minutes into this pause here. Is it working, the microphone? Yeah? Okay, it's all right. Okay, so yeah, let me start with I think the great introduction. So road freight in a way is at the center of society. It makes it creates value chains. It brings goods to people. It supplies shops. Does a lot of important things for the economy. So and I'm very grateful for the UK leadership already last year at COP. And for the great initiative that you are building and the support base. Like this? Okay. So once again, so kudos to the UK government for being so engaged on road freight. I also want to call out our colleagues from CalStart, yeah, on the global MOU and the recent actually new commitments on that. So this is actually a great work. And I think it's what's happening since then. So these are some of the important milestones. And obviously, this is now the time to go from commitments to action. Yeah? And the Smart Freight Center represents in this whole equation the demand side, the shippers community. So our job is specific, and there are lots of shippers also that commit to the global MOU. So our job is to bring together shippers, aggregate their demand, and basically become specific, granular, actionable, corridor-specific commodities, what is the standardization, and then work with the supply side, actually, that this eventually translates into an order book, yeah, that can actually be accelerated. Yeah, so I think we've all seen the commitments for our organization of a higher level. Now we need to bring that to deployment, yeah? And our goal specifically as a Smart Freight Center is to accelerate the deployment and to make it rather earlier and make it rather bigger. And for that, so our partners around the shippers community, the Amazons, the DHLs, the Nestles, etc. So they're all committed to science-based targets and wanna act on this. And I think this is the greatest achievement. We all know that there's some challenges, so we need to bring infrastructure into the question. That's why we have to be granular on the demand. But we are also we are very actually optimistic on that. So there's CBC Europe, so there's and others actually that are coming in. And then in many ways we have talked about the financing challenge, because structurally there's a lot of small carriers that don't have easy access to finance and can't really finance the uptake. But I think we're working together with the whole community on all these challenges, and I'm looking forward to hearing from my co-panelists.
Great, no, thank you, Christoph, and let's pass on to Andreas to hear that from the manufacturing side. How has this been in your company? Progress, gaps, and opportunities to address those.
So thank you for inviting Scania to this panel, and thank you to the UK for Glasgow and for the Climate Champions on the Road to Zero for all the great work you did before that conference. Glasgow was really about setting the ambitions, being bold and calibrating on where we want to go. So what we said in Glasgow was that we believe that 10% of our volume will be zero-emission vehicles by 2025, 50% by 2030, and going towards 100% in the 30s towards the 2040. And we're still saying that in Egypt one year later. So has there been progress? Yes. Just to give you one example, the largest road freight fair in the world, I believe, is in Hanover every second year. It's called IAA. And we missed one of these because of the pandemic. But what a show that was. I mean, I don't know if any of you were there, but all the OEMs and also the supply base started to now launch their zero-emission products and really displayed that and their plans moving forward. At Scania, we opened our order books for the regional haul application, and that is a truck that can carry 40 tons for 4 hours and be recharged in 1 hour. So yes, we're seeing progress. We're seeing the orders coming in, still at low levels, but we're really seeing that things are starting to move. I also would like to congratulate the UK and other governments in Europe and the US on what they're doing on the incentive side when it comes to purchase incentives. Because we must not forget that transport providers are still small, medium-sized companies taking up the large part of those. And it's a big capital expenditure for them. It's a lot of operational challenges that needs to be addressed. And with subsidies and incentives that we can count on and trust on, we will be able to accelerate. Has there been anything that we still remains to be solved? Yes, and I would say that is the charging infrastructure. We're not seeing enough progress there, neither in the UK, the EU, or in the US. We're seeing a lot of words, but we're not seeing too many concrete plans. And here we really want to work together with you. This is about permitting, this is about getting the grid capacity where it's needed, and this is about investments that takes time. So we need to get going on that as soon as possible to give the confidence to the market that this is the way forward.
Great. Thank you very much, Andreas. I'm going to, Baroness Veer, perhaps turn to you next at the end of the line. I suppose there was such a strong encouragement for the role of government at the last COP, and it's been interesting hearing the particular issues that Andreas has raised around this incentives. I was wondering where your view is on, say, how far have we got on this journey, and where do you see the next opportunities, the next things that need to be addressed?
I think, we have come some way on this journey. I mean, compared to some other transport modes which will remain nameless, we're not doing too badly, and I think, we have a better view on the direction of travel. From our perspective, in terms of our economic measures, we still have a plug-in grant available for HGVs, and that will stay in place till 24-25, because we've realised that we still need to bridge the gap between traditional and zero-emission, the cost of the vehicles. But I agree that one of our biggest challenges is going to be grid and infrastructure. I've literally just been talking to Graham Stewart, who's the UK Minister who looks after the national grid, and we were having that very conversation. It is going to be a challenge for all nations. An enormous amount of infrastructure needs to be put in, and also have investment, and indeed getting the planning permission to get all that done is going to be a challenge. But can I also just say, one of the things that I'm also focused on as well, it's zero emission, absolutely, that's absolutely where we're going. But there are things that we can do for the existing fleets that I think we sometimes forget about. This goes back to your point about being a lot of the operators are SMEs, and they're not going to be buying zero emission vehicles soon. It'll be the big fleets that do it first. And so what we've got to do is make sure that those trucks that they're operating are operating as efficiently as possible. And the government does quite a lot of work with industry in encouraging them to use, good aerodynamics, telematics, fuel-efficient driving, all of those things. That is important as well in the interim, just to make sure that we get that efficiency.
Very much. Angela, we have come some way, Baroness Veer said. How does that feel for you? How far have we come from your sense, looking beyond this country as well?
I mean, I'm a very practical person. So for me, the biggest advantage is really to see the trucks hitting the road, to see them out there, because it's all about scale, isn't it? As soon as we see the trucks rolling, see that they work well, and see that it does make financial sense. It is a huge investment, and like Andrea said, at the end of the day, it's going to be, you know, mom and pop shops. They have 1 to 5 vehicles. It's a huge investment. But I think we are also finding the solutions to solve that. So I think in the past year, we saw, for instance, businesses invest in leasing companies so they can use their financial muscles to buy the vehicles that the operators can then lease, taking out that initial high investment, and at the end of the day, total life cycle, it's going to be cheaper. The more vehicles we see on the streets in operations, the more scale we'll get and the quicker this will go. Because yes, we've seen progress. Have we seen enough? No. Do we need to move a lot faster to get to where we need to be by the time we need to be there? Yes, absolutely. And one of the most important tools to do that comes from government, of course. Because the manufacturers and the operators, they will move. I'm certain they will. But if we want to accelerate that transition, regulation will be key. And it can be in the form of incentivize this transition. It can be in the form of, you know, there's the carrot and there's the stick. So there's 2 important tools right there. And then, of course, the enablement of it. Energy will be absolute key. The grid, as it stands now, and I just say the grid because I do mean the global grid in every market, is not equipped for this. What will it look like to have a charging truck stop? How much energy do we think we need? It's like filling a pool with water, right? If you fill that water with a garden hose, it will take you a really long time, and the grid might be able to handle that, but you need a fire hose to fill a pool quickly. You don't have days, and it's the same thing with a truck. Yes, you can charge it slowly. Andrea's customers will not be that interested in that. And when you need the fire hose, when you need to fill that pool quickly and the truck, that requires a lot from the grid, and we are not there yet. So obviously government will have a huge role to play to make sure that the national grids are ready for this transition.
I mean, Angela, do you feel that message on the urgency of the scale of the grid is being heard or understood at the moment? Is there something different which is needed to move that forward? Because I've heard in so many conversations the need for this, the absolute scaling of the energy infrastructure, so important.
I think we know, but we're not there yet. The current pace is clearly not enough. So has it been heard? Yeah, I think it's been heard. Are we acting with a sense of urgency? We could do more, for sure. And I think it's important we recognize that 2050 is not the target. That's not the target. We need to reduce emissions by almost 50% by 2030. Now, how do we do that? We need to cut, because if we're not where we need to be by 2030, 2050 won't matter that much. So we need to have 2 thoughts in our heads at the same time, the long and the short term. So I don't think we're doing what we need to do just yet.
Either Christoph, Andreas, I don't know if you have any further reflections on this question you'd like to build on your colleagues here, of things that you think we really need to urgently focus on to address these issues in the next year. Any further gaps? Andreas.
I just want to actually echo the minister's remark that in all this, we're focusing on the new sales, and that's fair enough. That is probably the silver bullet of decarbonizing heavy transport. But even if we hit those targets with 50% new sales in 2030 of mopeds, 90% of the rolling fleet will be internal combustion engines by 2030. And let's not forget that. There are fuels, and there are, for instance, biofuels that I know, the biogas that I know the UK is working on, and also the EU with new renewed targets. And please, this is not a carbon lock-in. This is a reality. These are vehicles that is rolling today. Let's not forget them, because we have a carbon budget to relate to.
Yeah, I think also for the current fleet, I think probably some retrofit options may be available at some point. I think the infrastructure piece needs is really key. Yeah, so I've seen actually governments across Europe now moving to tenders, corridor by corridor, on to infrastructure consortium to lay out heavy-duty infrastructure. I think this is actually something that needs to scale also at the same pace, because otherwise there will always be this chicken and egg scenario, and people get, you know, especially the small and medium enterprises get nervous if they should already move forward.
Thank you, Christoph. Okay, I'd like us to move on to our second theme of conversation for today, which concerns the co-benefits of the transition to a zero-emission road freight sector. We're all aware the transition to a zero-emission road freight creates multiple environmental and health benefits, but how can the transition be used to boost economic activity and growth in our regions and contribute to national and international energy security? Baroness Weert, perhaps I can turn to you to kick off this one.
Well, I bang on about this quite a lot because all over the world, you know, we're talking about carbon, and that's great. Some people are still quite skeptical about it, but they can't see the change and they don't understand it well enough. However, if you combine carbon with the improvements to air quality, reduction in waste, and also less noise, actually it becomes a slam dunk. The co-benefits of decarbonisation should be considered, in my view, actually rather more greatly than they are now, because we only talk about carbon quite often. And actually, if you can say, and there's these other things too, which are also really, really good, because poor air quality kills people. It really, really does. And you know, I live on a noisy road. I'd love it to be quieter. Actually, a nice little electric HGV going past, it wouldn't really wake me up in the middle of the night. So I think there's a lot to be said for the other elements, and I think as we take forward the different types of technologies and we look at where the fuels and the energy is going to be coming from, it may be that decisions are taken based on the co-benefits in addition to the carbon reduction. So the carbon reduction will be the primary driver for the decision, but it could be that when we look at the co-benefits, actually one type of technology wins over another. I don't know, but let's not forget them.
Thank you very much. This really echoes a theme we have with the members of our corporate commitment campaigns, such as EV100. We survey those each year to say the reasons they've joined in those initiatives and the value they're getting from that. And co-benefits around health and wider economic growth for their organisation really come very high up. And it's a curiosity because we deliberately focus the campaign on a carbon message, you know, and a simplicity of an area, EV100 electric vehicles, but very much the conversations the company want to have draw in this much wider agenda. Andreas, perhaps come to you next to sort of follow up on this opportunity.
Hello. This is, thank you for the question. It's one of my favorite questions, actually, because
Great.
there's so many co-benefits. The more we learn about this technology, the more impressed we're getting. The minister's already been into several of the benefits: less noise, less vibrations. The drivers love these vehicles, better working environment, much more energy efficient. You do much more miles per kilowatt hour with an electric drivetrain than a combustion engine drivetrain. So we're seeing these many benefits coming up. And one that we learned just now recently is also that when we've been doing some modeling to see that electrified fleet of trucks will actually be able to balance the grids and ease the strain on the grid in peak sun hours in a renewable European system, for instance. What a benefit that is. But I think maybe the single most important factor, except for decarbonization, would be to rid ourselves of oil dependence from foreign countries. I mean, what a treat that we can be able to power the transport sector in Europe with electricity generated in Europe, creating those jobs and creating that national security that comes with having our domestic energy powering our transport systems. So I can go on, The benefits of electrifying heavy road transport are many, and the more we learn, the more impressed we're getting.
Do you find that people are understanding those when you explain that, or are there challenges in getting that communicated and understood?
Yes, I do. And honestly, now we're at a climate conference, and here we talk the language of decarbonisation and combating climate change. But the arguments that I just talked about is the ones that works, outside of Sharm el-Sheikh and the climate conference. That's the ones who sticks. Working environment, total cost of operation, national security in the end of the day. That's the ones that probably will make the shift go faster.
Great, thank you. Angela, maybe come to you next. How does this land with your many clients and other organisations you're spotting? How are they understanding the opportunities here?
Ample opportunity. With every disruption comes opportunities, right? And I think there's a few things. First, I love that the Baroness sees this from a cross-sectorial angle. I think the cost savings from the healthcare, if we take out a third of all lung cancer, asthma and heart disease, would cover this transition quite nicely. But we're so used to seeing everything in silos that we sometimes forget the massive cost reduction in other sectors that this transition will bring. But of course, from a working perspective and from a business perspective, disruption is always exciting. Look at digitalization. Sustainability is nothing less of digitalization when it comes to disruption. Look what that brought. New business opportunities, new venues, new jobs for millions and millions of people. When I went to school, app developer was not a job. It did not exist. Nobody had an ad. Nobody knew where it was. So imagine the work that will be very relevant a few years from now that we don't even know exist. Digitalization meant people could, provide for themselves being makeup tutorials on YouTube. That's because of digitalization. What will sustainable transition bring in terms of job? And we can already obviously see if we need to build out the energy grid, that will require people. We need new people to service and manage these cars. We need loads of work, and I think most of the jobs of the future we haven't even seen yet. So I'm quite excited to see what this will bring.
Great, thank you. Christoph, does this echo with your view? You're seeing the opportunities. Is job under here?
Yeah, well, I can only confirm the jobs situation, so the jobs argument. I think there are voices out there that say the whole transition to electric mobility is going to cost jobs because, especially in countries where electric vehicles are being produced, because it's actually easier to produce, etc. So there is a just transition angle there. But there are actually, in my former role, we have made work together with the University of Cambridge, actually, that's showing that the whole electric transition is indeed, electric mobility transition is a job engine. So. And there's a lot of, especially on the infrastructure side, in the infrastructure and grid side, it has such a huge potential, which definitely is, it's worthwhile going for. So this actually, and then beyond that, we're talking a bit from a Eurocentric perspective. This is something that will replicate actually in many other countries. So we have been working with the government of India on an electric bus actually tender, where they in the first instance they got 10,000 buses that cost less than diesel buses currently, and we will be looking at freight vehicles as next. So and again, it's an opportunity for jobs, local jobs in battery production, in asset production, infrastructure, and this is actually a global movement.
Just building on that global dimension, Angela, I wonder if there's anything that you have to say about how you're seeing the opportunities appearing in different parts of the world. I mean, this India example is fascinating. Where else, what arguments are working in different geographies? Are there different lenses on this?
Yeah, I do think it's a valid point not to get too north-centric. And it comes for all mobility discussions, but mobility does not look the same in Sweden as it does in Mogadishu, as it does in India. I think it's a wider discussion to talk about mobility systems rather than just road freight or urban or last mile. etc. So I think the important part is, as we transition to zero-emission trucks and as we update the systems, to make sure it's a just transition. I would hate to see Europe go electric and then dumping all of those vehicles in the global south, and the same for the US, sending all their old ICE vehicles to South America. And we do see South America specifically being very engaged in the transitions, especially for buses, because the public transportation system is, in many parts of the world, the transportation system, as are 2- and 3-wheelers. And that's not the discussion we're having today. But I think we all need to think outside of our own geography and realize that we need to make sure this works globally, and we need to make sure we find the solutions for different type of mobility systems.
Great, thanks Angela. Okay, so I think we can now move on to the third of our discussion areas, and this is one that, Baroness Veer, you posed the challenge in your opening remarks. Enhancing the diversity of this sector is critical if we're to decarbonise transport as a whole. And you talked about the fresh ideas and perspectives we needed to bring to the table. How can we harness technology and data to help serve local communities? So the question we'd like to explore then is, how can we, as in your different roles as government, industry and academia, encourage more women and people from diverse backgrounds to join the freight sector? What are the ways that we can better promote inclusive behaviours in this sector? Angela, you have the mic. Maybe you'd like to kick off on this one.
Sure. I have a story, actually,
Lovely.
on
Go
this
for it.
topic. I'll try to speak quickly.
No, we're fine for time.
I've spent most of my career in transport, and it has been very male, pale and stale to some extent. And once upon a time, I was a trainee at a very large Swedish truck manufacturer. And one of my jobs as a trainee was to do a benchmark on cabins. Now, driver shortage was a problem already 14, 15 years ago. It was a long time ago now. It was a driver shortage. Already then, we identified that, yeah, if we exclude 50% of the workforce, i.e. women, that might have impacts on us having driver shortages. So we did a benchmark study on cabins. Now, I am the exact average height of a European woman, just like right there. And I sat in every top-of-the-line cabin coming from the 7 largest manufacturers in Europe. And the thing is, for an average height European woman, that cabin is rubbish because you cannot reach things. So I could not reach the cup holder. In one of them, I could not get up to the bunk bed because they'd taken away the little ladder and they replaced it with a step. It's just from that step to that bed for someone that's 165, impossible. There are photos of me trying to climb it. So, you know, sometimes it is really simple. Why do we sit here and ponder, why don't we see women, female drivers? Yeah, because it's a product not built for them. You know, is that a good working environment? Not to be able to reach the cup holders and the bunk beds and all of it. So sometimes it's really, really basic. And what has been done in that area since we came? I mean, it's just a small example. It just goes to show when you build a product and you build an industry by men, with men, for men, then obviously the women will not be there. And I'm not even starting on all the calendars on the walls in all the workshops I've ever visited. Are they though?
I feel like if we need to fill things out, there's some more stories for you to tell on this, Angela. This is good. But no, the insight on sort of engineering and design is so fundamental to the way that products are in the world we are and part of this. So it's really good to put that part of it through. Christoph, how do you land this question with you?
Yeah, so I think if we go, I think this is a whole ecosystem, yeah? So if you go beyond the manufacturing jobs, I mean, there's a lot of engineering design. I don't have any stats right there, but I can tell you for our, basically our shippers and our ecosystem, if I look at the gender balance with our interlocutors, and I could now go through like 20, 30, 40 companies, I mean, the majority is women. Yeah, so I think it's high on the list. If you go to role models in the sector, so when I, in earlier days when I worked with Scania, it was always Åsa. Yeah, so the chairwoman of Daimler Trucks. It's a very very Swedish industry. It's Swedish. Yeah, so the lady that leads the largest consortium on infrastructure is a woman. So I think there's role models, and I think that definitely will attract more followership. Yeah, and obviously I think it's up to the big companies to attract that and to. But I would be actually quite confident about that.
Great.
Yeah, so I guess I'm the accountable one here. We are doing a lot. This is hurting us today. We're seeing shortages across markets on service technicians and drivers, and it really hurts us today. We have done a lot. I can proudly say that across our markets and across our segments, the share of female drivers is increasing. So we must have done something with the caps, or the women has grown. But I think it's safe to say that it's the first one. Now, when it comes to service technicians, 20% of the ones who get into school are women. And our mission now is to make sure that we welcome them to our company and that we ensure that they are staying, that they are thriving there. And that's all about culture. And we're working a lot with creating an inclusive culture that will make women feel that they can stay and succeed and aspire for more, as Christoph was talking about, becoming leaders in the industry. So we have a lot of things to do, but we are aware of the problems, and we're working on it.
Great, thank you, Andreas. Baroness Veer, you raised this challenge, as I said in the speech. I'd be interested to hear you build on this conversation and the opportunities that you see.
Well, there is another sector that had a very significant old white male problem, and that is the buses. And the buses actually focused on it, and they decided that they were going to try and do something different. So obviously, from a truck driver's perspective, it is about outreach, particularly going to schools and colleges, etc. But actually, you can't drive a truck straight out of school. You're not old enough. You won't be able to get insured. So you have to pick them up at other points during their journey. And what the bus companies did is they put an advert on the back of lots of their buses. If you drive a bus behind a bus in the UK, it may well say, "We're looking for drivers. Would you like to come and join us? Flexible hours, good pay." And they try and attract. They've had to change their rostering system, but they've adapted their sector such that you can work part-time. So you could do it in the morning before you pick your kids up for school. And in the adverts, they have pictures of people who are just all sorts of different people. Young, old, male, female, whatever. And so, I would just like some of the, truck operators to put a great big sign on the back of their truck so that people, when they're driving down the M4, can look at it and go, actually, I would like to drive that, thank you very much, because it's great fun and it's a really rewarding job. So I've just focused on drivers, but I do think, looking slightly beyond the logistics sector, maybe they can learn important lessons from other sectors.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so I'd like to thank the panellists for covering the three questions we'd raised, and we have just a bit of chance for some final reflections from them. And I suppose given the sort of sense of progress that we'd talked about, some progress, not everything we wanted in this last year, maybe I'm interested in seeing how you are looking ahead to what we should be hoping for in 2023. So when we're in Dubai in a year's time, what do we need to have got to? What do we hope to see? What will be the markers of progress and success for our work in this area? And I'll go along the line. Christoph, perhaps start with you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Indeed. So I think this is now from commitment to action. So we need to basically be practical, move on the ground, create an order book for by shippers and who are also willing to pay the green premium, need to engage with go deep in with suppliers, what does it take actually to ramp up quicker, what do they need, the specs, the standardizations, etc., and then do that with the infrastructure providers and provide financing solutions. I think we need to, in a way, bring those elements all together in one space, yeah, and then become practical on the ground so that action really happens.
Great. Implementation, that's the thing. Yeah. Andreas.
Yeah, addressing those three major roadblocks that we were talking about earlier, taking out the operational challenges, mainly about being bold and deliberate when it comes to charging infrastructure. Not only should our customers, the transport providers, pay 2 to 3 times more, they also need to set up depot chargers and face numerous other operational challenges. Let's work together to remove those. Incentives and regulation. Let's just agree to jumpstart this. So we will be hit 2025, 2026 with good numbers. And then we need those incentives to be there for a while now. TCO parity will come, but right now we need to jumpstart. And lastly, the demand signals. We need also to be able to pay for this shift. That goes for public procurement, but that also goes for the private actors. At Scania, we have 10% of our logistic budgets earmarked for being able to choose the more sustainable option. That's one model, you can do it, but the demand signals need to be there. We need to translate ambitions to order books.
Okay, so demand and finance, and I think that the jumpstart bit, and I was thinking when you were saying that, Andreas, earlier, of the point that Angela made about the visibility of this being seen to be happening, that people feeling real, and therefore the way that informs your decision, the way that commitment itself can inspire action by seeing this live on the roads. Angela, turn to you. Where are your hopes or optimism or doubts for 2023?
Well, I'm very optimistic with some of the collaboration we're seeing in 2 ways. I love to see competitors come together like Traton, Volvo and Daimler did. Who would have thought you three would work together? But saying, look, we have a common problem. We need to work together to fix it. We'll compete on selling trucks, but we'll collaborate on charging infrastructure. And I think that's wonderful. What gets me even more excited almost is to see the whole value chain working, breaking down those silos, which obviously I hate, but seeing how energy is working with automotive, working with charging, working with, it's going to take more. And then as we electrify the trucks, we can, shift focus to, they still need to be charged with renewable energy, or we won't get there. And we still need to find, green steel, aluminum, cast iron, and we need to take care of batteries. It's an issue. So I'm really looking forward to all the collaboration up and down the value chain, working in ecosystems to find collective solutions to common problems.
I'm really pleased that you mentioned a bit about the value chain there. At the Climate Group, we've been opening an office in China and finding a way in which the most useful way we can interact there. And interestingly, the place there seems to be a real space is in the connection between the steel sector and the drive for zero carbon steel, and the link with that into the auto sector, and of course then ploughing through to the work on renewable electricity that will supply the green steel. So it seems to me this way of thinking those as connections and seeing this transport sector as part of a wider system is going to be incredibly important to making that happen. Baroness, if I can turn to you for your final thoughts.
Well, Angela told you what makes her excited, so I'm going to tell you what makes me excited. Regulation. Because only governments can put forward the right regulation, and unless we have proper and effective regulation, people won't have the certainty to invest. So for example, for our phase-out dates, we have done a call for evidence to look for exemptions. Now, there'll be very, very few exemptions, but the point is, you don't want terrible regulation. So you've got to get it right. So from my perspective, it's always, and I'm always really, really clear when I pass any new law, how much consultation have we done? Are we sure we've got the right law? Because we don't want to come back and change it. And if it is wrong, then actually we will be throttling industry, and that is not what we want to do. So that is very much what's going to make me excited before COP28. And also I will be watching TCO. I'm absolutely fascinated to see when, for all sorts of different vehicles, when TCO will reach parity, because then I think we will have got to a huge milestone.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. I've heard lots of messages through this around. We landed with policy at the end, which is such a vital one, but demand, innovation, finance as being critical parts together of this system we need to pull together. On behalf of all of you, I would certainly like to say thank you very much to the panellists for making sure we had a really informative conversation this morning, adding to the debate on that. I know that's prompted some thoughts as me, and I hope you've all got some new ideas for taking forward this agenda, as we all need to collaborate on taking it forward. So thanks for your attention, and thanks to all of the panellists.